Here we go. Welcome to Paddlecast with Betsy
and Billy. On Paddlecast, we talk to and about paddlers who are pushing the limits, paddlers who are pushing their own limits, and pushing the limits of paddle sports.
We are excited today to welcome Ekaitz Saies to Paddlecast. Ekaitz is the Paddle UK Performance Director for Paracanoe and Canoe Sprint, which is a serious title for a big responsibility. He is one of the most important people leading Team GB's sprint athletes in the current Olympic and Paralympic cycle for Los Angeles 2028.
Yeah, it's a tough job coming off the disappointment of Team GB not having any athletes at the Paris Olympics. Ekaitz joined Paddle UK 1 year ago in January 2025 and officially stepped into the performance director role last August.
Ekaitz has a background in both high-level paddling and coaching. He raced internationally for Spain for 15 years, and he won 2 world titles. That was in 2009 and 2011. He went on to get his PhD in sports psychology in Spain and was coaching some of the top Spanish Olympic athletes before he moved to the UK. So because of that experience in sports psych, he brings a unique perspective on mental resilience to his coaching and has titled his new book, The Champion's Mindset. You can also check out his new podcast, The Champion's Diary. Ekaitz, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So it's clear that you have a lot of responsibility as performance director, but can you tell us a little bit more about exactly what your role is? Are you doing a more hands-on coaching? Are you managing the coaching staff? Tell us what your typical day or week looks like.
Yeah, so my role is to manage the coaches and also create the right culture so the athlete can perform the best. So every day is different. That's what I love about my role. We could start the day with meetings, but it could also be that I'm on the bank watching the athletes. We could run a video analysis session. We could be running a benchmarking session, which involves lactate testing, and then afterwards analyzing those results. Involves being the team leader at international competitions. I'm also in the international panel, so we discuss the selection policies. So it's a very broad role, and obviously you have to be slightly crazy and passionate to take on something like this. But I've done it for many years now, since 2015. So it's over 10 years that I've been doing this in Spain and recently in the UK.
Just on that, what did you think of the culture of British canoeing when you first got into the setup? Is there anything you've really had to work on changing?
Yes, one of the first thing is to try create a better connection between the world class program and the community. So one of the first things I did was visit some of the top clubs in the country, engage with stakeholders and understand their perception of the world class program and vice versa. Having conversation with people involved in the world class program to understand what's going on, because I didn't feel there was a healthy environment to really strive for excellence. So that was the first thing I noticed, and I'm sensing that things are changing and things are improving, and we had some good results with the women's K4 this year. The men's junior had a really good European championships as well. So I think the things are improving, and the community is buying into it. So obviously it takes time to change a culture, but I think we're turning things quite quickly. So it's something that we should be proud of.
That's really interesting. You mentioned the link between the clubs, and it was something that we were going to look at later. But Betsy, do you want to go down that now, or should we wait?
You know what? Let's get into it, because it's. I mean, Ekaitz, you've just told us that was the first thing that you noticed coming here. So yeah, what were the biggest cultural differences that you noticed right off the bat?
So, for example, just to give you an example, when I worked in Spain for nearly a decade, the process of creating a racing calendar was very, very simple and streamlined. So it was 3 people that were involved in creating the national calendar for all disciplines, from sprint to slalom to dragon boat. So the whole range, and so it was basically the performance director, myself, the head of pathways, and the head of competition. So it was 3 people, and we just tried to align all the competitions so they didn't clash. So we allowed sprint paddlers taking part in marathon races, and marathon paddlers taking in sprint races, and even downriver and slalom. So we tried to create a calendar that could accommodate paddlers taking part in different disciplines, which especially for development, I think it's something fun and really important as well. So that is one of the main differences that I saw, that we have different committees, and each committee has their own agenda and vision about how the calendar should be distributed, and because it's a more complex context, then it also makes the calendar probably it creates more clashes, so it doesn't allow sometimes to be able to prepare for a sprint properly, and then for marathon you have to pick one of them, and usually because there's way more marathon races on offer, then naturally, if you like competing, you have to make a decision. And if you only race sprint 3 to 5 times a year, and you have the chance to race 20 races a year, then depending on your personality, you may go with the 20 races. So I think that's one of the big culture changes, that the calendars were not conducive to be able to do both.
Yeah, we have a pretty heavy calendar in the UK, I think, with so many Hasler races, and if you do multidiscipline, as soon as you add the surf ski calendar, if you add the WWR calendar in there, and then sprint, it's pretty heavy.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So the UK is very marathon heavy on its culture. Every club is all built around Hasler racing, and I'm not completely familiar with the Spanish scene, but really I think Spain races shorter sort of formats more often than these sort of 20K races. Am I right in thinking that?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So the Spanish calendar is quite simple. So the first national race of the year is the 5K nationals, which happens always in March, and it's the biggest event where sprinters and marathon paddlers join, and it's the first time they see each other. So it's like a really big event. Currently, probably they have around 1,000 entries, so they had to cut and only raise juniors, under 23s, and seniors. So it's a really big event, and then from there on it branches out a little bit. So it goes sprint with the first national cup in April, and then another one in May. The first marathon may be around the same time. So yeah, and then you have the marathon nationals, usually a few weeks separated from the sprint nationals. So yeah, so usually people can do both, but it's yeah, as you say, it's there are less races, and I guess that you can target them better.
Yeah.
So that's why internationally as well they do well, because they kind of periodize the training plans for certain goals rather than just racing every weekend.
Yeah, and but on the subject of the shorter sort of format culture, do you think that helps develop athletes to be well, better at sprint, better at marathon? You know, do you think we're held back by our long distance sort of, you know, real love of long distance racing with Haslers, you know, slogging out Hasler? And the UK's marquee event is Devizes to Westminster. You know, it's a long slog through the night, whereas, you know, Spain's, you know, marquee event is probably the Cellar. You know, it's a much shorter race. You know, do you think that helps in the way that the nation wins medals across disciplines?
Yes, and there's another factor that it's quite interesting when I came over to the UK, and I realized that in Spain, usually clubs that aim high, that they want to race sprint and marathon and do well internationally, they tend to be very clear on sprint technique and marathon technique, that I didn't find the same context in the UK in some of the clubs. So you just paddle the way you paddle, but if there's one golden rule in physiology that is like, you adapt to what you train. So if you always train for long distances, then you will be good at long distances, but you will be slow in shorter distances. And the other factor is the health related one, that if you're paddling, let's say, a 500 meters race, a male senior paddler can do 138, 140, a world-class paddler. It doesn't matter if your shoulders are high, your elbows are high, your frame is like in that position, in a locked position, that the cost of that tension on the muscles is, it allows you to race for that duration. But the same technical model in a long distance event, it would just destroy your shoulders. So what you do when you race long distances, you protect your health, you protect your shoulders, you protect your muscles. So your posture tends to be more economical for the long duration. But then that technical model translated to sprint means a lot of inefficiencies. So that is one of the differences I saw as well, that there is no clarity on this technique is for sprint and this one is for marathon. And those athletes that understand that, so for example, Fernando Pimenta doesn't paddle the same way. It's the same person, and the variation technically to the untrained eye, it may be none, but to the trained eye, you really see that when he's paddling along like a marathon, for example, he's protecting his health. Whilst when he's paddling 1,000 meters race or 500 meters race, more extreme, then he's paddling differently. So is that having that, what I usually call the Swiss knife model, that you just use whatever you need for, it's just developing that.
Yeah.
You're just dropping like technical gems here. This is gold.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that hit very close to home.
Yeah. And I suspect it did for our audience too.
So yeah, my advice to the community is to try to encourage that, to be clear on, this is how we like to paddle a sprint, and this is how I would like you to paddle a marathon, and these are the reasons why, and and then explore both options.
I think we don't do a huge amount of technique training in the UK. It is very, in general, we work harder and we pull harder. And I think a lot of other nations spend a lot more time on technique, and it does show, I think.
Yes, and sometimes I've shared with my coaches some videos of, because now thanks to social media you can see the German top lifter, multiple Olympic champion, and all the paddlers, the Aussies and the Spanish, and you can see how they do the same session, let's say a 15K session, and you see the difference in stroke rate and the difference in the posture, how they paddle, the frame, the catch, the patience on that stroke, even the groups. Usually these nations tend to have smaller groups, like maybe four formations of four, and they have wash leads every 4 minutes, and the one that's leading tends to paddle the way like you should paddle in the sprint technical model. Whilst here more often I see that you just go in the group and you don't pay so much attention to the stroke rate, and so I shared those examples with some of the coaches, just to start planting that seed as well in the community, that it would be good to see that, especially if the aim is sprint, then to be clear on that.
Yeah.
And there's another thing that is very, very different between Spain and the UK, and it's that in Spain, most of the clubs that are aiming for the national league, so there's a league system, which I think it's also really interesting, because it encourages it kind of gamifies the whole thing, that you raise a national cup, you gain X amount of points, your club is ranked number 12, you do better the following in the following cup, and then you suddenly see your club in 8th position. So it just stimulates that competitiveness. But the other thing is that also these clubs that I'm in for that that national ranking, and I don't have the exact number of how many of them, but they do have either professional or semi-professional coaches, and usually many of these coaches are fairly young, so they do see a path and a career in coaching, and that's very different to the UK, where most clubs are volunteer based, which is great. Like, don't get me wrong, I really love clubs like mine, for example, in Oxford, where you just go and anyone can join at any age. Is fantastic. If you are 50 and you've never paddled, is the best place to start paddling. So that is great. But at the same time, there's nobody or few people are qualified enough in the clubs to be able to write a training plan to aim to have like the next world champion, junior world champion, for example. So
Yeah.
whilst in Spain you have many coaches that have the ambition, that have the right qualifications, and also the a few years ago the whole coaching program, so educational coaching program, went into the government, and now is part of the so the government actually like runs the whole curriculum. Is the highest level, the third level, it's the equivalent of a first year of university, so it's like a 2-year course, full time, and it's really, it's very demanding. So, and the other thing is that each club that races nationally needs to have at least one person in the club with the level 2, which is already like a full year course. So
Wow.
so yeah, that obviously incentivizes clubs to have a person that is highly qualified, that has gone through the whole training philosophy, psychology, all the branches that are related to high performance sport.
It's really interesting that you've got to be so qualified in Spain, with that experience, and I think the UK would really benefit from that. But a lot of the clubs just don't have the money. There needs to be a way for some of the money in the sport to be able to be funneled into the clubs to do that.
So this is very interesting because I expressed this to a few of my colleagues. Many of the coaches that are in clubs in Spain and many of the national coaches that have recently won Olympic medals, and even including myself, like we all worked in a very interesting model that every summer from June to September, we used to run 2-week courses for kids, and I started working when I was 16, and one of my happiest years was 2002 when I won the European under 23 the European Championships in the under 23 category, and it was the 2nd of July. So that meant that I could work for the entire July, the entire August, and the entire September, just teaching kids. So it used to be five classes per day from 10:30 in the morning to all the way to 8 in the evening. And the first 4 were children from between the ages of 10 and 14, and the last session was for adults. And I earned good money. Each child or adult like paid a fee for taking these 2-week classes, and those who liked the classes like also joined again for another course, and it was really good because we were young. We earned some money, and in a way we saw a path in coaching, and also in retrospect, I think the interesting thing was that because of the age gap was very like close between the athletes, or in this case would be the beginners and the instructors, then probably there was more connection as well, that maybe if your instructor is 20 and you are 14, the age gap is similar, so the language and everything is quite close. And the other thing is that it also teaches those young instructors like a bit of discipline. So you have to be on time, you have to be respectful, you can't say this, and so on. And the other benefit of that model was that you can also recruit talented athletes. So if you run a whole summer courses and you see that that a kid enjoys it, that maybe join 3 different courses, which is like 6 weeks, and uses some talent, then you can always approach the parents and say, hey, like looks like your child really enjoys paddling and she's doing well. Like, do you think that maybe joining the club would be an option? Like, we do this, we go to these competitions, and you can travel around the country, with the sport. And oftentimes they join the club. So I think it's an interesting model that we should definitely start exploring in this country as well.
I think we do a fair bit of that at the clubs here, but I definitely, I'm sure there could be more of it. I know at Royal we've had a pretty good program for a little while, but that was how I got into paddling, was through a summer camp as a kid. So,
amazing.
Not in this country, but I'm a full advocate for that for that approach. And then we called it camp counselor, but yes. So I guess like stepping back a little bit to thinking about how last year went for you. So you took on this role about a year ago with Paddle UK. So that was January 2025. And then in August, you became the official performance director. And it was a pretty good year. I mean, even though you've just stepped into this role relatively recently, there were some big results. Paracanoe team, of course, we expect it from them. They are really just the best para squad in the world. I don't think anyone's going to contest it really by a margin. So they did great, lids of world and European medals. And then I think for the non-para squad, Emily Lewis, she won a bronze medal in the K1 200 meters at the World Championships in Milan. That was a huge, huge result for her and for GB. You mentioned some big results from, the junior boys as well. So looking back at 2025, thinking about that as sort of your first year, or not technically, right, but more or less, for yourself and the team, do you feel like you hit your targets? What were some of those goals, and how do you think you did in retrospect?
Yeah, so we're very proud of this season because we did reach the targets that we that we wanted to reach, but not just that. Even we reached the stretch targets that UK Sport decided for this season. So it was really good, and yeah, some of the key elements to this season were that we looked into the periodization and the way we approach competition, but also the psychological aspects, because obviously not qualifying for Paris was a big blow for these athletes, and I could see that they lacked the confidence to really perform the best. I strongly believe that we have the best women's squad we ever had, this country ever had. Obviously, there were some fantastic results some years ago around the London 2012 Olympic Games, but I do believe that the current cohort has the qualities and the potential to do even better than that. So one of the main steps was to build that confidence and the trust between them, and also create that teamship, that because oftentimes when things don't work out, then we tend to just decide, I'm gonna focus on my K1 and that's it, because I have full control of what I do, and working with others is always more challenging. But when you do well in a crew boat, and I've been part of crew boats and team events, it's just incredible. Like sharing a good result with your teammates is just an amazing feeling, and it's something that we've been working on, and the girls have been fantastic. They really bought into what we were trying to achieve, and it's been a really good year, and I'm very confident that we'll see much more of them this Olympic cycle. So yeah, it's very, very exciting.
That is very cool. That's a big vote of confidence, and I think a lot of people will be excited to hear you say it. It does seem like you've got some good magic in those women's K4 crews.
Yeah, definitely, and when you see them interact, like you'll see it, you sense it. You enter the room and you sense that there's something special between them, and how they talk to each other, how they behave. So yeah,
that sounds really healthy. So when you set your goals, how do you think about process versus performance and individual versus team success? Like, how do you set up those, and can you share some of the goals that you've set for 2026?
So 2026 is going to be really interesting, because it's the first time that the Olympic qualification system changes. So now we will have an ongoing world ranking system for 2026 and 2027, and then there will be a last opportunity to qualify for the games in 2028 at the continental qualifiers. So 2026 is going to be very different for this team. Not so different for teams like Spain or Germany or Australia, because the way they approached the season was different. So the first World Cup was already important, and because we worked with block prioritization, so you can perform, you can peak more often throughout the season, whilst the model that is been used here in the UK has been more linear. So usually the first World Cup wasn't that relevant, and then the European Championships was the secondary event of the season, and then the World Championships was the priority. So now 2026, you have to already start in ranking positions from the first World Cup, and psychologically it's important that you start well, because if you find yourself already off the mark, then you have to, obviously, it's the good thing about the ranking system is that at the end of that process you'll see if you are consistent. So even if you have a bad day, then if the other races are good, then you can still qualify. But so the goals that we set for the team are that we are strong in each competition. Obviously the most important one is still the World Championship, so we need to make sure that we don't burn all the matches before the World Championships, and we still deliver our best performance at the World Championships. But the big change is that now we need to deliver good results from the very first World Cup, and there will be 3 World Cups, so it will involve more racing, more traveling, and so that's how we're approaching this season.
How do you think that's going to affect like stepping back from your sort of GB focused role, like the broader landscape of the sport? Because I mean, it's a big change really to have a rankings based qualification system for the Olympics, and the World Cups have historically, I feel like, been a bit more kind of optional, right? Like you want to go to get racing practice and things like that. How do you think that'll affect like the level of competition at the World Cups, or the broader landscape?
So in theory, it should increase the level of each competition, which is the aim of the ICF, and it's good for the sport. So if that happens, the risk is that because of financial constraints, because things are cost of life is more is rising. Everything the flights we already experienced this year. Like flights were way more expensive. Everything is more expensive, and most governments are not giving the sports more funding because of this new situation. So because of the extra World Cup and so on. So some teams are, based on the conversation I have with many of the team leaders, they won't be able to take a full team to competition. So they will be more targeted for those who will be contenders for the world ranking and the Olympic qualification, and so we could see a decline in participation. Maybe not a decline in level, because obviously everyone will be fighting for those points, but the risk is that maybe some teams won't be able to enter some of these competitions, and also because of that, not many teams will be able to take a full team to every competition. So we could see a decrease in participation. So we shall see. It's all new for everybody. I always try to see the bright side of things and support the decisions that are made. But obviously, I am concerned, and it should not just me. Like many of the other team leaders share the same sentiment. So yeah, let's see how this impacts us. But hopefully it will be good for the sport. We have a wider reach, because now we need to race also outside of the continent of Europe. So for example, this year we'll go to Canada, which is exciting, for a World Cup in Montreal, and next year we'll see, but it will probably be more towards the east. So yeah, it could be good. So let's fingers crossed that it will work out well.
Yeah, that's a very insightful observation. I'm feeling a little worried for teams, especially from places like South Africa or Australia, New Zealand, or South America, Argentina, where maybe it's going to be very far for them to get to 3 World Cups. But let's see. We'll find out. Very interesting developments here.
Pretty good for well-funded nations like the UK, like GB,
that are relatively close to all 3 World Cups.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's going to be challenging, definitely.
Yeah. So, Ekaitz, you've talked a little bit about mental performance. You've got your, background, your PhD in sports psychology. You've just mentioned the role of confidence in sort of building up the current squad that you're managing. Can you talk a little bit more about, I think sometimes people think athleticism is mostly physical and discount the mental side. I know you're very much of the philosophy that the mental side is key. Maybe share some other examples from your real life, either, for you as an athlete or for the athletes that you are, managing and coaching and leading, where psychology or mental strength really played a critical role in paddling performance.
Yeah, so one of the key things to be able to win a big race, Olympic medal, World Championships, is believing in your possibilities and your capabilities, and that's something that you have to work on, and hopefully your environment is also part of that same sentiment, that they feel that you can do it, they believe in you. And so it's an internal process, but it's also an external one, that you surround yourself with the right people that really believe in your dreams and are part of that. But sometimes as well, it happens that because of past experiences, and that belief is not there, so you need somebody external that brings that belief, and oftentimes that is why having a coach is so important, that because they see ahead, and they're the ones that are going to push you in the right way. And so I oftentimes joke, because people ask me what's more important, is it a physical side, or what's the percentage, and is it 80-20, is it 50-50? And I always say it's 100% physical, 100% mental. You do the math, because it's both are so important that you can't really split them. They're part of the same process. So psychology that's what motivated me to do my PhD. Was more about to find the answers to the questions I had when I was an athlete. Why do some people perform their best when stakes are really high, and why some train really well but then are not able to deliver the same level of performance? And that was the main drive, to really try to answer those questions from a theoretical perspective, from evidence-based scientific studies. So yeah.
Very cool. And that's something that you see, day in, day out, is the impact of that mentality on athletes' performance.
Definitely. And so just to give you an example from the Tokyo cycle. So we came back from Rio with the best games ever. We won the 3 golds and a bronze medal. We won the K1000, Marcus Cooper. Then we won the K200 with Saul and Christian. We won the Slalom K1 women with Mayalen, and also a bronze with K1 200 with Saul. And our men's K4 was 5th. So it was really, we had some really good paddlers going forward, and we had some rumors that the men's K4 was going to change from the 1,000 to the 500, and we didn't know when that would be confirmed. And the K4, the 1,000 was already, the team was already 5th. So we thought, like, you know what, we're going to really take the risk and start focusing on the 500 from October onwards, and that was our main focus. The project that we created was that we want to win the first K4 medal in an Olympic discipline, in an Olympic event, since the previous one that was won in 1976. So since 1976, Spain didn't win an Olympic medal in the K4, and neither did we win a medal at the World Championships since 1975. So that's how we started the project, with that vision. The vision was to win a medal, and everything that we designed, all the training plans and the psychological aspects, were just to make sure that we would achieve those goals. And we entered the first World Cup, and we won we won a medal. We were second behind Germany, and it was an amazing journey. So we went to Tokyo after the whole COVID situation, and unfortunately I wasn't with the team that year, but I joined them again the following year, and they did manage to win a silver medal. We beat the Germans at European Championships, but then they beat us at the Olympic Games. But nevertheless, it was a fantastic final, and it was as I say, the first time like we won a medal since 1976. So that was fantastic. And again, based on that experience and the belief and everything we did to achieve that goal, then we went all in for the Paris cycle, and we said, we're going to build the strongest team ever. We want to qualify and win medals in both K4s, men and women. The women didn't qualify, didn't race at the games since Beijing 2008. So for many years, for over a decade, we were not successful with the women's team. But nevertheless, we said we're going to build the best women's K4 ever. And same with the C2. We wanted to have both men and women winning medals. And then in Paris, it's very interesting because everyone that was racing at their final. So we had a K4 men and women in the final. We had a men's K2 in the final. We had a C2 men and C2 women in the final. If you ask any of them what the goal was, they would say the goal was to win the gold. But then reality is not like it's not straightforward, and out of say 13 people, 6 came back with a medal, which is fantastic. The others, because of different contexts with the women's canoe, it was clear that the wind didn't help, and the women's K4 they didn't have the best race, which is normal. But nevertheless, they all came back home with an Olympic diploma or medal, and that's why, back to the importance of the athletes believe in it, but first somebody before the athlete has to believe in the possibilities, and that's the role that coaches and performance directors should play. That they're the ones that are driving that vision, obviously co-created with the athletes, but as I said, sometimes because of the past experiences, or because you never won, then like why you should win next time. So you need a coach, and you need a team that really believes in that vision.
Amazing.
Sort of, yeah, you've got to believe, and then you succeed, and then the success sort of keeps breeding more success because you have evidence that you can win.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Wow. Okay, right. So you recently published a book called The Champion's Mindset and started a podcast called The Champion's Diary. I saw on Instagram that the book has already made its way into the hands of some top paddlers, like the three-time under-23 world champion Jonas Eka. What types of athletes should be reading your book and listening to your podcast? And what are you hoping it's going to help people achieve?
When I was an athlete, all the books about sport psychology that I could find were either very academic or just focused on one topic. So if it was mindfulness, it would be all about mindfulness. If it was something else, it would be about that topic. But there was nothing that I found practical that was written for me. So the motivation was to write something that I would have loved to have as a young athlete, and that I would benefit from. So that was the main motivation. The other thing that I found really interesting is that the percentage of top athletes that have bought the book, I can't share names. Obviously, I've shared some because they shared it on social media, so I've shared those. But it's a really high percentage, and it makes you think about like that. Even if you, because there are a couple with a few Olympic medals, a few Olympic golds, and it makes you think about how the champions, they always trying to learn and keep improving. Even if you won 3 golds, 3 Olympic gold medals, you still want to find if there's anything. Maybe there's nothing. Maybe that person finishes the book and is like, oh, right, I know that. But if they find something, like it's already a gain, it will make them better. And so there's several examples that I was like, wow, this is incredible. Like this person, like wanting to read this humble book. It's just, something that blows my mind. So it's not designed for them. It's obviously, it can be helpful, and I'm very happy that they decide to buy it. But it's for anyone. It's for anyone, and it's very so it's directed for athletes and coaches that could maybe share some of the learnings from the book, but it could also help you in life. There's an example that I share in the book about when I did my PhD defense, how I approached that day, and it was exactly the same that I approached the race, like visualizing the place, even going there before, so I could really see the room, how I manage my emotions with a playlist that I created before. So if I needed some arousal, I will listen to a song. If I needed to calm down, I will listen to another one. How I activated myself physically. So just luckily there was nobody in the room, so I could jump and I could move my arms and so on to get in the right state of mind. But the examples that can help anyone in their lives as well. So so it's a book for anyone, I believe.
That sounds really good. I think that's something I'm going to have to add to my reading list.
Thank you.
So if we've got time for one final question, I know we're pushing it a little bit here, but I really want to ask you, Ekaitz, about what I think is one of the coolest things you're doing, because you've got a very full-on job as performance director, but you're also doing all of these other things outside of that to support the sport, like the book, but also the paddle games, which is so cool. So can you talk a little bit about sort of how you came up with the idea for the paddle games, and how did this all come together as an event?
So the reason is very, very similar to the book. Actually, it's an event that I would have loved to race as an athlete. I would have loved to race as a 20-year-old, and it did not exist. So if it did not exist, somebody will have to create it. And I just decided to think outside the box. What could be something that a 20-year-old will enjoy today, from the race perspective, the race format, the media coverage, and the way a 20-year-old athlete would like to be portrayed as well, socially. So those were the main motivations for creating the Paddle Games, and the reason why we started in Palma, and now this year, well, in 2025, we held the second event, was that the club in Palma de Mallorca is it's a sailing club, but it's also a canoeing club, and they're very successful as a sailing club, and they organize one of the most important sailing races in Europe. But because of the environment, it's an island. There's no race course. There are no big rivers. So organizing anything in sprint canoeing is almost impossible. But the club still, the leadership team or the board of that club, they've always been trying to push the club, the canoeing section to organize an event that obviously not match the big sailing race they organize, but to bring something interesting. And so I met with Carlos Borras, who's is the person responsible for the canoeing section, and he shared with me his problem, and that he was thinking in sprint terms. So you need sprint starting buckets, which are really expensive, in transporting them to an island, and also it's salt water. So there were so many complications, and that's why they for a long time they were not able to organize that event. And it just coincided that I registered the Para Games name, the format, and everything, and I said, Carlos, I think I have the solution to your problem. And that's how we started. And the vision with Palma was that in Formula One, Monaco doesn't have an actual race course. It's the city itself. So why don't we bring canoeing to the city? And it aligned with the vision of Paddle Games, which is to bring paddling to where people are, rather than making people go to these courses that are usually 20 kilometers away from any city. Or so that was the vision, to organize something right in the city center. And yeah, and we're very happy. It's still a very small team, small budget, but the impact it's having and the reach is just incredible. So yeah, we're really happy, and it's a long-term project. We're not rushing anything. We just want this to stay for many years, and the vision is that eventually we'll be able to add more cities to the format, and have a sort of Paddle Games League. So we're in conversation with another city now. It could be 2 races maybe next year, if there's another one eventually. So the aspiration is to have a Paddle Games World Circuit where athletes can really experience something different, something more radical. Another interesting fact is that based on the numbers that we're seeing, and the age groups are really young, and that's the audience that we're targeting, because I believe that traditional sprint canoeing is attractive still for all the audiences, but not so much for the young ones. And so with Paddle Games, we're trying to attract that niche of younger audiences and do things differently. And the best thing, and I'll finish with this, is that the main protagonist of the Power Games are the athletes, and how they are enjoying it and sharing all the content and everything. So they are actually the best advocates, are the athletes. So myself being an athlete before and working with athletes, it makes me really proud to see they buying into this format and enjoying it, and sharing it with their followers and friends. And yeah, so it's fantastic.
I think that comes across really clearly in all of the media and marketing, which is so cool. And I'm already wondering if we could have a paddle games in Kingston. Let's see. We'll take that offline. Thank you so much, Ekaitz. It has been an absolute pleasure to speak with you today. I feel like I learned so much from you, and I hope we have the chance to speak again soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me, and congratulations on the project. It's great. It's great what you're doing and sharing the love for our sport, and well done.
Cheers,
Thank
Ekaitz.
you so much. So that was totally fascinating. What did you think about that conversation with Ekaitz?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I have some mutual friends with Ekaitz, but I'd never spoken to him, and I was really impressed with sort of his mentality. Which I suppose if you're going to write books on sports psych, you're going to have a good mental attitude. But he seems to really know how to win. He seems to have a clear sort of view on how he's going to get sort of success out of Team GB. And I was really interested in them.
There's nothing like having the experience of taking so many winning athletes and top athletes to the Olympics for so many years, and then coming into the UK and knowing what that process looks like, knowing what it takes. And he definitely has that. And I think I really like his focus on sort of mindset and culture. And obviously that's what the, athletes themselves can probably speak to the best, who are actually, being paddling and being coached under his, program and coaching staff. But I thought the moment when he highlighted how positive that culture is in the sort of women's K4 group in particular, I think that's the kind of collaborative, buoying each other up rather than sort of tearing each other down competitively. If he is able to actually sort of create that more positive team culture, that's the type of thing that builds both short-term and long-term success.
Yeah, I think there's certainly been some cultural issues in the past across the board, and it could be really good for that to have changed now. Do we know how long his contract is? Is he just on this Olympic cycle?
I know that it's been officially published and stated that he is leading this Olympic cycle. So I think we've at least got him through LA 2028, unless, presumably some random weird thing happens. And then I would imagine they would probably reevaluate that based on how that goes.
It'd be really interesting to see, what short-term success he can have in this Olympic cycle, or if Ekaitz does end up leaving and going somewhere else. What I think it seems like some of the stuff he's implementing could have real long-term benefits to our sprint kayakers.
Yeah, definitely, and that would be great to see. I know all of our marathon fans are probably a little skeptical about this, but hey, as we said, look at Spain. They don't seem to, their marathon is amazing, their sprint is amazing, and neither discipline seems to be bringing the other down at all.
Yeah, I mean, look, everything Ekaitz said was, hit very close to home. People with too high a stroke rate, people that don't do enough technique sort of work, and that's me to a T, and I'm very jealous of sort of some of these nations that seem to have athletes that are really well drilled, they're really powerful over short distances, but then can transfer that to longer distances, where I get on, I've got no power, and I can go for a long time. It's okay for doing long hacks, but I'd much rather be a more powerful athlete who can do that sort of stuff. The 5K. I love the short course. The short course for me, short course marathon is the most exciting sort of discipline that we've got across nearly all canoeing formats, and that's much more what I'd like to be as an athlete. And it seems like the Spanish, have got that one locked down, whereas we in the UK, we get on the water and we go for a long time and we pull hard and we keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is a very important skill. And
it's a very
we
important
have
skill.
some
Yeah.
great paddlers here too. So certainly not a knock to them, just that we want more of them, right? I know I'm going to go and watch some videos of Fernando Pimenta now and compare his technique while he is doing the K1000 versus the marathon.
Yeah.
But I think that wraps us up for this episode. So thanks to everyone who tuned in. And until next time, see you on the water.
See you on the water.